Today's video, we're going to talk about how to make sure your course works. Now, a lot of people will want to make sure that their course works by making it pretty. But really, it's not about making it pretty. There's a lot more to making a course work than pretty. Let's talk about this. Okay, so marshmallows and spaghetti. Have you guys ever heard of this experiment with marshmallows and spaghetti? So what they're trying to do is they would pass out to a bunch of teams these marshmallows and uncooked spaghetti, and they would have a challenge. Who can make the tallest tower in a set amount of time? Everybody's got the same materials, usually string, spaghetti, and marshmallows. You can see I'm doing okay here. Then they all work together to try and create, these teams work together to create who's got the biggest tower. Well, when they did this test over and over again, they found out that the ones who tended to do better sometimes were kindergartners. In some cases, like if you compare different categories, kindergartners often did better than engineers. And that's because, well, that's what researchers believe, is because they approach the whole experiment, this whole project, like an experiment. They're curious and they're creative. How about if we try this? How about if we try that? Now, what happens a lot of times with engineers and very smart people is that they approach this well, I know how it works, so I've just got to make the marshmallows fit my vision. I've got a vision already, and I'm going to force the marshmallows and the spaghetti to fit my vision of what works. So many towers have been destroyed, so many spaghetti and marshmallow towers have been destroyed as a result of that. And what does that tell us? It tells us that we often do better when we don't go in with an idea of it's going to be exactly this way, but we go in and say, how can it work? What if we try this? What if we try that? This is how to tell if a course will work. You put aside your preconceived notions of I'm going to make the course work exactly like this, and I'm going to make all my materials look beautiful, and then I'm going to throw it out there and everybody's going to love it. Well, sometimes when people don't love it, we tend to blame them. Well, they just don't understand, or they're the wrong audience, or they don't get it. Really, we need to come up with this attitude of saying, how can I be curious? How can I be sure? How do I know that my assumptions are true? And this is super interesting. So have you ever had a situation where you were sure something had to be a certain way, and then it didn't work out, and because you were curious, because you were creative, you found a better and different way? That's how we create courses too. So course creation is in 3 phases. There is the discovery phase where you're like, okay, so what do I know about the audience? What do I know about the topic? Generally, you're an expert in whatever it is you're going to do. So if you're an expert in making marshmallows, then you will know a lot of the content. But your audience, you don't necessarily know a lot about your audience. This is where we have to do a lot of discovery. Like, who wants to make the marshmallows? Why do they want to make the marshmallows? What kind of knowledge do they already have? What do they need to know? What can I do to motivate them to make better marshmallows? That sort of thing. And we remain curious about that, but that's the discovery phase. We think these are our assumptions about the content and how the content can be created and who these people are and why they need to know this particular thing. Why do they want the outcomes that my course provides? So in that discovery phase, we make a lot of assumptions, and the first time through, because you're going to go through these 3 phases multiple times before you finish your product, but the first time through, you're going to spend a majority of your time in this particular portion, in the discovery phase, discovering, writing down your assumptions, testing your assumptions, talking to people. In this particular phase, you'll also start building, your audience and your following and stuff like that. So in the second phase is design. So you've got all those assumptions, and you're going to try and put a design together. You're going to try and well, what if it looks like this? And what if it works like that? Now, you don't know if it works yet because you have to test it, right? So in the design phase, you're going to spend some time being creative and trying to think of something fun and great ways to make your points and to shape all of the things that you want to teach into learning events. That's what design does. I'm going to take all this content and I'm going to shape it and form it into these learning events. And then the last phase is delivery. And this is where you're going to get a live audience. And your first time through, it might be free or very low and inexpensive. And you're going to test out what you put down in your discovery and what you put out in the design to see if it will work. Now, sometimes it won't work. Sometimes it needs to be abandoned, and sometimes you need to keep trying. So you might go back to discovery. What about my assumptions was right or wrong? Was I off or was I on with those assumptions? Kind of important to get the test group that is the right fit for you. So you can test those assumptions, and then you can look at the design. Did the way that I shaped those learning events, did that work or did it fail? Like, did it flop? It didn't work. People didn't get it. The instructions weren't clear. I did too much telling and not enough extracting from them. So you go back to those particular phases and then you deliver it again. And because you're delivering it maybe a little bit different every time, this is why you may hear about things about an iterative design. That's kind of what I'm explaining, these two different iterations. And also why it's super important to do what is often referred to as an MVP. This is a minimally viable product. So you want to create workbooks and slides that are not finalized, that are not finished. I mean, yeah, try to remove all the spelling errors and don't make them as ugly as don't make them super, super final and pretty and, complete. I say to aim anywhere between 50 and 80% complete. I think it's better to do 50, but some people don't feel comfortable with that. But make the ugly workbook, make the ugly slides, make them so that it's clear what you're trying to communicate, but not necessarily the final fonts and colors and all that type of stuff. Because that stuff takes a lot of time. And also, the more you pour into those documents and those slides and making them look like beautiful, finalized documents, what I've discovered is it's less likely that you'll want to make changes to them, so you tend to be resisting changes. So throw out an MVP, do a minimally viable product, deliver your course, and then go back into the discovery phase, into the design phase, and deliver again. And then go back as many times as possible. Generally, it's 3 to 5 times before you finalize your document, before you finalize your course, before you finalize all of the slides and all that type of stuff. And then you can be pretty sure that the course that you're going to create is going to work. You're going to be able to test it. As you get closer to the end phases, you can start measuring the results. And when you're measuring the results, you can see the impact it's having on people. It's going to build belief in you, and it's going to build belief in others. And how many iterations do we need to build a big, strong tower made of spaghetti and marshmallows? Because I'll bet, given enough time and given enough marshmallows and spaghetti sticks, you could create a pretty tall tower, right? So go out there, build your tower, and go and create a course that works for your audience.